Dan, if a stranger approached you on the street, not they were in dead sprint and they ran up to you, no, like a normal person approached you.
Oh, no.
It's a much different question that way.
Yeah.
If a stranger approached you, what would they need to say or do to convince you that they are from the future?
Oh, that's a really good question. Oh, man. Boy, I don't know, because
you can ask like follow up. This isn't like an ironclad like strict rules.
Well, all right. So let's do this. I'll ask you some follow ups and see. So, how are they dressed? Are they dressed like contemporarily, or do they look like Doc Brown coming out of the DeLorean?
Oh man, I wish I could do a Doc Brown impression. But they're just like normal person. You know what? Actually, they're wearing the exact same clothes you're wearing. No, they're wearing just like a black shirt and jeans.
Okay, so just neutral. Nothing crazy. They're not wearing like self lacing shoes or whatever. It's just okay.
It's not like work retreat 2033. It's like, well, that's suspicious. That's a suspicious shirt you're wearing.
You could have made that at a shop. you strange person who's come up to me. I think because, okay, so here's a fun tangent about this, right? I think people always think, well, I would ask them for the lottery numbers, or I'd ask them for like sports results so that I could do betting. But like you, Richard, if you went, do you know yesterday's lottery numbers? Like if you went back in time?
No, of course not.
Right. So I never understand that question, because unless like I'm coming back with an almanac or something, there's no way that you know anything. And even then, like you could say anything. I think that the criteria for me believing they were actually from the future, and they're not, okay, so they're not going to show me like a device that got them back to the past, right?
So to be clear, this person does not have any special technology on them. Okay. They're not a supercomputer. You can't be
they're not a cyborg.
They're not a cyborg. That would be pretty obvious. But they also like don't know everything about everything. So you can't be like,
okay,
when do I die? That's too somber. But like you can't ask like these sort of omnipotent questions.
See, because here's the tricky thing, right? And I want to put a pin in where I'm going with this. But first, the tricky thing would be, depending on what questions you ask, you might not believe they're from the future. You might believe they're like a wizard or a psychic, which is another problem entirely, right? So I think assuming if they say I'm from the future, right, then for me to believe them, I would need... Okay, here's my follow-up to this. Are they claiming to be me from the future or just a guy? This is important, Richard.
This is not... That would be, I think, a much different question. And I think the questions would be a little easier to put together. Right. But here's the thing. New question. Guy who looks nothing like you is like, I'm you from the future. You don't need to actually answer that, but...
Yeah. But if he looked nothing like me, I'd have a lot of questions about what happens to my diet. He's
not trying to convince you that he's... I don't remember being that shade of person. But, like that kind of... Nothing like that. They're not trying to convince you that they are you or that they know anything really about you specifically. They're just saying, I am from the future.
Okay. Because, so I don't know... I don't know that I would believe them unless they told me something about me that uses information that only I or a very particular person in my life would know, like currently, right? Mm-hmm. So the problem is, I don't think I would believe anybody, because anything they would say to try to prove it that wasn't something only I had information about would be, I would just think that they could make anything up, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's nothing that they could do, absence of like physical proof or something, where I would say, okay, I believe you're from the future. I think it would have to be like, hey, that, I don't know, that like home loan that you were thinking about for this very particular project goes through, and then somebody crashes into your house. I don't know, something like that. Like,
sure.
It would have to have some piece of reality for me to believe it. Otherwise, I think they would just be crazy.
Okay. What if they approach you? They say, Dan, I'm from the future, A, and then they go, B, they just say your deepest, darkest secret to you on the street in public.
Then I think I would I wouldn't believe they're from the future. I would believe that they have like
Sure.
I would believe they have Russian compromat on me or something. Like how did you possibly know that? Either that, or if they told me a story that's like you totally lose your marbles in the future and you let all of your secrets known, and I found your Twitter feed or something, like then I would be like, okay, maybe, you know. But I think that the question of would I believe they were from the future, I think there would have to be some kind of physical evidence, or like if they had like gills, you know, I might believe them, right? Like if it's like, oh, we went in 20 years, it becomes Waterworld and I have gills. So, you know, I'm from the future, you know, but then I might think they're just a freak. I don't know.
20 years. Waterworld situation. Right. 20 years.
Look, it's a rough 20 years. All right. Invest in rafts. That's
Things
the only
are
way to
looking
go.
grim out there. What if he came up to you and he levitates 4 inches off the ground, and then he lands and he says, "I'm from the future." See, this is getting a little more ridiculous. I understand.
Yeah, no, but I think this is where to go, right? Because I guess it also depends on the kind of mood I'm in. Like if I'm in a really bitter mood that day, I would probably really interrogate him and be like, okay, first of all, I understand that you just levitated in front of me, but that doesn't mean you're from the future. You might be, you might be a psychic or an alien or something.
You might just be a guy who can levitate. I don't know. You're probably, but from this time.
I think you have a secret, but you might be lying to me about the future. That's what I would say. Like there's something going on with you, but I don't believe that you're from the future unless you can tie that to something else.
An otherworldly force? That's a given at this point.
Yeah.
From the future, though.
I mean, if he came back and he had like a, I don't know, if somebody demonstrated time travel to me, then I think I would believe them. I think that's the only way that I would, because I think I love time travel for like science fiction reasons, but all of the science that I very lightly understand basically says that because, and I didn't think we were going to get this dark this fast, but I guess it is kind of our show sometimes anyway.
It's inevitable.
The law of like entropy in the universe, like everything breaks down and energy is conserved, but it changes form, right? And so I think the belief is that physically it is impossible to travel backwards because the thing that you're trying to get to doesn't exist like anywhere in the universe anymore, right? Like that energy is broken down and becomes something else. So you can travel into the future because you can go faster than the speed of light and then just kind of like sit in the darkness waiting for the light to catch up to you. But I think everything I've vaguely understood from looking into this for like storytelling reasons, I think it's not possible. So for them to make me believe that, I would want to see them like, you know, send a sandwich back 2 minutes and then it pops into existence, you know, something like that. That's what I'd want.
I'm just imagining this new scenario that has to keep adapting to catch up to this. But the idea of him running up to you, saying, "Dan, I'm from the future, and before you ask, we invented a way to take energy and matter and reconfigure it so I can temporarily host it in your timeline."
Yeah, I love the idea. I thought you were going to say, "Dan, I'm from the future, and before you ask, watch the sandwich go back in time."
Before you ask, here's a ham sandwich. Oh, wow, the future.
Wow. All right, you read my mind. See, okay, but if that happened, then I'd believe him. Even if he just held up a ham sandwich, based on this conversation you and I have had, if he said, like, I'm from the future, because this episode hasn't come out yet. So if he said, here's a ham sandwich, as like an inside joke, I'd be like, okay, I believe that you're from the future. Either that or you hacked into my computer somehow.